going out to try to find someone to rise above this tidal wave. But when you try and stand up tall, your fear, it brings you down. And everyone around will watch as you're falling apart. And they don't know who you are, but it's okay. Their words will come like a loaded gun, pointed at the wrong target as your ghost came to steal your crown. Didn't make a sound, so everyone will doubt while you are falling apart. And they don't care who you are, but it's okay. Like a butterfly can't catch, like a champion is mad his match. Every time you find something new, old memories keep seeping through. Like a broken bridge that's burned to ash, overlooked and fading fast. Like a poem that nobody gets, with a clear thought you can't express. There was a time you thought you knew, but war wounds weathered what you thought was true. You're a toy soldier wound up so tight, all the gears are moved, you have broken inside. And now, afraid to make a sound, don't wanna be called out by people who are just clueless to the guilt that's manifest inside. Afraid to even try, so everyone will sigh while you are falling apart. The poison's reached your jilted heart. Don't go away. I am a mute tree, John Barley, corn laughing at me, through me. Sometimes I feel like a witch that must drown in an ocean just to prove I'm human. As I go downtown to witness a public hanging of someone who's innocent. Before they send him down, he said out loud words that brought me to my knees. As he said, don't you cry for me, they can't hold me. Before I go in peace, wanna leave you with one thing. All our pain is parallel. Save a life and save yourself. Find a kindred heart before yours tears apart. Take the pain and find a way. Help another through. Things that burn in you, the things that burn in you. Beg for more than she could possibly give. It's nowhere to live. It's so dark as I'm just out to try to find the light. God's great thumb now shining out among the
Max from Pushball here, and thanks for joining us on Vera TV for tonight's events for Exterminator City 10. We've got some great things planned for you as part of this indie comics and zine festival. Tonight we've got an interview with Julia Wald and Vladimir Verano discussing Julia's latest publication, The Suspension of Disbelief, which is interviews with workers impacted by COVID-19, presented as really beautifully detailed comic illustrations, and an interview with Jose Alanis talking about his book, The Phantom Zone, which is 30 years worth of work, including comics and prose. We also have a panel of zine professionals telling you their top tips on making your first zine, or maybe polishing a zine that you want to put out. And I will be showing you how to do a saddle stitch, 2 different ways to make your zines finished and bound together. We've also got special musical guest Sam Harrell and Alien Boy. So stay tuned, thanks for joining us, and you can check out the whole festival at exterminatorcity.com. Hello.
Hi, I'm Grimm, coming to you live from this... Hi, I'm trying this one more time, and right off the bat, I want to say thank you so much for having me here as part of Exterminator City, although virtually, and I'm excited to see all the other performances that are happening today. The first song that I'm going to be performing is called Utopian Fiction, so... I just realized I'm wearing different shirts in every portion of this video, but that's because I filmed it over a few days. So if you were wondering about that, now you know. All the songs that I'm playing today are coming off of an upcoming album that I'm going to release that I have not announced yet, but I will soon. So if you want more information about that, you could follow my Instagram at Grimmwave. Since this is a zine festival, I was told I should talk a little bit about zines and comic art and what that means to me and what the community means to me. I also do some comic art and zine making. I haven't been drawing so much over quarantine, but zines has really still been a place where I could still experience community even during quarantine. I've had friends in different places like mail me their zines alongside some just drawings and letters and stuff. So that's been a really good way to keep in touch with people and still experience my friends' art. Also with the internet and everything, I've still been able to participate in some other friends' projects and small book projects where they can just email and see if there's any submission I would like to include or anyone else would like to include. So that's been really good too, because otherwise everything becomes very solo. And I think one of the best parts, for me at least, of art making and music making is having that community. So still having those projects going on has been really great, and it's really great to see something like this happening as well. And one other thing that I've been focusing on for the past few months that has helped me a lot from keeping my art from getting too insular, from still having that collaborative aspect with things, is my roommate and I, or my old roommate now, but my old roommate and I, who's a lot more tech savvy than me, we started working on a digital art gallery together. And it's not even so much a gallery as just an interactive landscape where you can walk around and see other people's art. And it's lots of like digital stuff like GIFs, and we're encouraging people to submit their 3D art and like new things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see in a physical art gallery. So that's not a zine in the traditional sense, but it is a form of getting art out there where we want to encourage people to just send us emails with whatever ideas they have. So if that idea does sound appealing to you, we do have a call for submissions for an internet art themed exhibit right now, and you can check out the other exhibits as well on cyberwarehouse.com. Okay, the last song that I will be performing today is called Sailor and Me.
Hi, this is Max from Push Pull, and I'm here with Sarah Maloney and Ann Bean from Emerald Comics Distro. And we're talking about tips we give for newbies making zines. So we're going to give you our best insight into doing your first self-publication. And my first tip is that paper has 4 sides when you fold it. So you want your zines to be divisible by 4. It's a magic number in self-publishing. And I'll throw it over to Sarah. What's your first tip?
Thank you. My first tip, I think, is like pick a point to stop, know where you're like working at, so you actually just get your work out there, because you can keep wanting to change things and you're like, one more thing, it's not ready yet. I think just get your work out there. You can always do a revised edition or something.
Yeah. My first tip would be, if your intention is to like consign your work at a shop, for example, like Push Pull, put a cover price on your book. This is the number one thing I hear from retailers that they're like, this is neat, and I don't want to deal with this because it doesn't have a barcode, it doesn't have a cover price. I have to like keep a separate spreadsheet or memorize it or put my own label on it. So put a cover price on it.
Yeah. From us, like, it's mostly just putting a label on it, which some artists don't want, but also takes time. And occasionally the person putting the sticker on doesn't have the most wonderful handwriting. So, anytime you could just avoid that situation is great. So my second tip is to know what paper size you're working with. Generally, if you're self-publishing, then you're working with standard size pieces of paper. So 8.5 by 11 is letter size, and then your other standard sizes are going to be legal and tabloid. So if you want to design a 5-inch by 5-inch zine, well, that's not a standard size piece of paper. And so you're going to have to get a custom size paper, cut it down. It's going to be pretty expensive and kind of wasteful. So know what size paper comes in, and don't try to make it up.
That's a good one. I'm often wanting to do that, and then I'm like, wait, no, that's too much work. Going off that, I think also think about, before you start drawing, like think about what size you want to print it, right? Because if you draw something in a sketchbook that's a different dimension than you want to print, you're going to have huge gaps or something. So just be aware of that. Yeah.
Going off of that, there's a concept that happens in pre-press called bleed, which is just depending on, like, if you're going to the copy shop and copying on the copier like the 90s, there's going to be, an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch at the edge that doesn't copy either at all or the way you want it. And that's one way of thinking about bleed. It's that little. So when you're designing something, if you're going to design something on the computer that you're going to print out, or that you're going to send to a printer, design with bleed in mind. Most printers cannot print all the way to the edge of the paper. Some can, and you need to have your art extend past to the edge of the paper for them. The terminology can be a little bit confusing. I know when I first started using InDesign, I was like, full bleed, what? But educate yourself. Bleed is your friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that one. It was a challenge to me when I first started using like nice printers, and they were like, you need to include full bleed, and I was like, wait, you can do that? All right, well, thank you both for joining me today, and I hope that we inspire somebody to go make some zines.
Yeah. Thanks, Max.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Max from Push Pull, and today I'm here with Jose Alanis. So, Jose, can you give us a quick introduction of yourself?
Hi, I'm Jose, and I'm a professor of Slavic languages and literatures at the University of Washington. And I also have a new book out of comics and prose called The Phantom Zone.
Awesome. So we're talking about the Phantom Zone since it recently came out. So I have had the privilege to read this whole collection, but for other people who aren't familiar with it, what is the Phantom Zone and how did this comic originally come into existence? Because this is not primarily something that you created recently.
No, the book is kind of a collection of material I've been working on since the early 90s. I've been living in Seattle since 2003. I've been working at university, and I've made friends in the comics community, and I was a big frequenter of Dune. But, most people didn't really know me as a comics artist. So I have been making comics for a long time, and I had this strip in college at the University of Texas at Austin called The Phantom Zone. And, I continued the story after college here and there. So I had, some material, roughly 50 pages of material. And then really as a result of going to Dune and participating in it and meeting wonderful people like you, Max, and Seth, and Mark Campos, and so many other people who were just so supportive, it really reignited like my passion for making comics. So over the last 5 years going to Dune, I started accumulating some material, and I started thinking, I ought to put out a collection. And so I went looking for a publisher, and the first publisher originally was going to take it, and then they turned it down. But then I ended up with a model press in San Diego, which is an imprint from the San Diego State University. And so they were very accepting of the material. And finally, it all came out thanks to your help, since you were the person who kind of formatted the whole thing for me. It finally came out in June of 2020.
And so the Phantom Zone that is the main comic that's in there takes up about half the book, but there's also other work in there. So how did you figure out, you also mentioned there's prose in there. So how did you fit prose in? What comics did you decide went with it? Like, how did you decide what you wanted to show, as this is almost 30 years of work?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this question, because I think here I do have some advice for people who are starting out. Don't make the mistake that I did. So originally, when I was approaching the first publisher, I'd rather not name them, but I was thinking that this is going to be a career spanning, even though I haven't really had a career, more or less. It was going to be a career spanning collection, and I kind of threw everything in there. I had a number of short stories, I had a number of comics, and a lot of different things, and it really didn't hang together very well. So I think part of what the problem was for the original publisher, and this is what eventually came out, because they did work with it. They were very encouraging. They tried to they had me redo it kind of along to reorganize the material more thematically, whereas I had kind of done it chronologically. And so anyway, there was a lot of just kind of different ways. Ultimately, the publisher felt that it just was not going to work for them, and I understood. And so what I did was just really cut back on a lot of the material. It only has one short story in it, which is it's very much about family history and about growing up in the Valley. It's probably, one of the more kind of Valley focused stories in there. And so I really had to kind of think about myself, what was really the most important. So the material is, like I said, it's made up of stuff that I did going back to the 1990s, but the last part of the Phantom Zone is kind of a trilogy. The last part of the Phantom Zone I finished in 2018. So it very much kind of is material that's over those whole 30 years. And then it was just a matter of, I knew I wanted to tell the Phantom Zone. That was the most important thing. And I'd wanted to finish it. And so I did. And then I wanted to do, obviously, more material that was going to be about life in Seattle and about, again, maybe some more autobiographical stuff. And so, but at the same time, I wanted it to be, I guess these are two separate, opposite things, really. I wanted to be something that had a kind of cohesiveness to it, and that was kind of about my sensibility as an artist, but then also that was very diverse. So I think one of the better reviews of the book that's come out, I think, said that that it switches very quickly from like a kind of a tragic mode to a very humorous mode. And so even if you're, if you feel that it's getting too heavy, like just within a couple of pages, it gets much lighter. So, and vice versa. So I guess I feel that I guess I got that more or less right, that I do think you get to see that I'm not really adhering to any one style. In my work, I tend to switch depending on what the project is. And that's kind of important to me, actually, because I think ultimately the individual story, the individual work is what determines the approach. I think you would agree with that.
Yes, that is actually what I tell people all the time. So there's no one answer. It's,
well, don't you think that sometimes, I mean, to me, I guess maybe I always worry that I'll fall into just like one approach or one kind of, I mean, and look, I mean, if you're Jim Woodring and you're a genius, you can do the same thing for 40 years and it's still going to be awesome. But if you're not like me, I think it's good to maybe try different things. So the book has, photo comics. It has obviously more traditional strips. And then it has stuff that's more experimental, so and that's kind of just because I have wide ranging interests and I've been reading comics since I was, 6 years old. So I think the medium can handle a lot of different approaches.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I like when artists show that they can stretch and do different styles and approaches. So
yeah,
I liked that.
But like I said, I mean, I think there's something to be said also just for consistency, right? If you're the Hernandez brothers or you're Jim Woodring and you're doing the same thing, I mean, it's still awesome. So that's just not me.
Yeah, everybody is here. So thank you for sharing insights into the Phantom Zone and publishing and your work. So where can people find this book?
You can order it on Amazon, and it is available through the Amadal Press website. And I am trying to get it out to other bookstores and to Pushpull and to some local places here and in Texas primarily. So yes, it should be available. Please check it out.
Thank you. Max from Pushpull here, and I'm going to explain what saddle stitch means, because when I started printing my zines, I would see this and go, I'm not sure what that is. Is that what I want my zine to look like? And it's a funny thing because it actually means two different things. One is an actual stitch and one isn't at all. And that's the most common one. So we're going to talk about that first. So the most common thing that a saddle stitch refers to is actually staples. So we're talking about the staples that go along the spine and through the center. And I will show you how to use a long arm stapler to get that perfect. Now, the second thing that a saddle stitch refers to is the original thing, and it is actually a stitch. So that is a stitch that goes along the spine. See, there's a little knot there, stitch, and then the center of your book has a stitch in it. They're both great ways to bind your zines, and they're both called saddle stitch. So let's take a look at how we can actually do that. So for this demonstration, I'm going to use some cardstock scraps for my blank cover and some printer weight green paper scraps. And the first thing we're going to do is fold this in half. And I'm going to use a bone folder. Looks like this. It's not really made of bone, it's plastic. But that will help my fold to look nice. So, fold there. And then I'm going to fold my pages. So I'm actually just going to use a couple of these, fold those in half. I would start in the middle and then out to the sides. So pages there. And the next thing you need is a long arm stapler. So this is long arm stapler, called such because it has a really long arm. And this we're going to move so that the distance between the plate indentation right there and the edge of here is halfway. So our spine, where our paper is folded, we want to hit right there. And we want the outside of the spine to be what's on top. Some long arm staplers have measurements right here. This one doesn't. So I kind of just adjust it until it looks like it's about right there. And then push down firmly 2 times. And we've got 2 staples right on the spine, and it folds nicely. And then I'm actually going to refold that a bit so it lays pretty flat. Well, what about the other kind? For that, we'll need a few more things. So we've got our blank pages, our cover, we need a pencil, bone folder, something pokey. This is an awl, but you could use like a needle too, a ruler, and a needle and thread. I usually use a pretty thick needle. And then this is just embroidery floss. You could get something fancier, but embroidery floss will do just fine. So we're going to start out with folding. Folding in half. And folding in half. All right. Well, now we need to figure out where is the halfway point along this. So I'm going to measure. This is about 3 3/4 inches. That's kind of a weird one. So 1.5 would be half of 3, another 1/4 of an inch would be half of 3.5. So our middle is going to be right there. And then I want equal distance on each side of an inch. And the fun part, stabbing. So I'm just holding this straight down and pushing down. Now, if you don't have a workbench like me, you want to make sure that you're working on something you don't mind getting little holes stabbed into, like some cardboard or a scrap piece of wood. So now we've got holes all the way through, and you're going to stick your needle from the cover side through the middle. And I'm just pulling it through till there's a couple inches left. Then I'm going to go in the top hole and pull it all the way through. And now my needle's on the back. I'm skipping this middle hole, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Now my needle's on the inside, and I'm going to go to the middle. And I pulled my needle right off my thread. So I'm going to pull these two ends really tight. And then just like I'm tying my shoes, tying a square knot over it and a double knot to make sure it's nice and secure. And then you can trim this, or you could leave it long if you want to have a really handmade look. And your zines will have a little bit of an artist touch to them. So now you know, now you can do it at home. So I'm Max again, and I'm here with Julie Wald and Vladimir Verano, and we're talking about the latest project from Julia that Vlad helped bring to life, which is called The Suspension of Disbelief. And can you tell us a little bit about this, Julia?
Yeah, I started the project in early March, right before lockdown started, and it was just going to be interviews with service workers, mostly in the restaurant and bar industry. And then lockdown happened, and I was laid off, and everybody I know was laid off. And it seemed like the perfect time to extend the project to other industries in Seattle. So I started interviewing more people outside of the restaurant industry and doing comics based on those interviews, and made it into a book at the end.
And Vlad, what was your role in the project?
Well, basically, right as we were going into lockdown, as the gallery with all the members, we stayed in touch through the whole process of transitioning into, what lockdown meant for us. And then Julia mentioned her project, and I was just like, this sounds really, really interesting. And basically, for everybody out there, my job is to essentially help people self-publish their books, but I've also worked on some graphic novels and comics. And basically, the way that Julie described her project, I felt that it was a very timely and important thing to try and capture. And so I volunteered my services just to help Julia see the project through from, and I would take on all the production difficulties while she took on the creative work.
So so this is stories from people, how they've adapted or how the pandemic has affected them. And why put it out now instead of at the end. So this is sort of unique in that I think a lot of people are waiting until there's some sort of closure to tell stories, but you've released it right now at the end of the year.
Yeah, the type of process I used was more in the moment interview style. So basically like sort of a day in the life or what they were experiencing that week. And with COVID and the way it's moved through the community, people's lives have been changing really, really fast. So a few people in this book either found jobs or are still unemployed, or their situations changed, or maybe they've even moved out of Seattle. So it is a rather in the moment piece of work that documents like very, very small increments of time within the pandemic itself. It is more like journalism than just a straight narrative story. So I didn't really think that I needed to wait till the end of the pandemic to put it out, considering even within the book itself, you'll see that I have each interview and then I put the dates of each interview to clarify what was going on at that time. And considering we've all been in lockdown for so long, and this pandemic has lasted longer than anybody ever thought it would, even April now seems like an eternity. A decade has passed in between now and then. So I didn't feel the need to wait to put it out for that reason.
So how did you decide who to interview? Did they come to you, or were you like searching for people?
A little bit of both. My first interviews were all with friends. So the first interview itself was with somebody I knew outside of social media and other things. And I got a few coworkers to talk to me as well, because most of us had multiple jobs, not just one in the industry. And then I put out a call on Facebook for more people. I wanted to talk to people in healthcare, teachers, that sort of thing. And that's where I started to get people that I had absolutely no relation with or no connection. And that was real fun, because I think when you know somebody, sometimes when you're interviewing them, when you're writing down their thoughts and things, you have this bias because you already know their personality traits a little bit. And when you're talking to people you don't know at all, you have to be a little bit more careful with how you write their character, their voice, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So for both of you, I'm curious if there's one interview or one person story that really stands out as your favorite.
I would have to say it's probably a tie between Norden, who is homeless and still is homeless, because his story was strangely optimistic. And I've known him for a very long time, and it was literally the first time I've actually ever had a conversation with him outside of just hello, goodbye. And so doing that interview and sitting down and because I obviously had to do it outside, I couldn't do it over the phone or on video chat, was interesting. He had a lot to say. He's a really educated person. So that was really entertaining and also enlightening. And it was nice that it ended on a high note rather than, I guess, a depressing one, considering the pandemic is pretty sad in itself. And then Paul, just because Paul was really, he was just very intuitive and had a lot of, I guess, deep thoughts about how the pandemic was affecting him and his family that really moved me. So those two would be, I guess, my favorites.
So I was actually thinking Paul as well. And just for some context, Paul is a bus driver. He drives the 49.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the reason why they're all really great perspectives, a lot of perspectives I had no idea about. But Paul's mainly because I have spent the pandemic riding buses. I for various reasons I've had to travel around, limited, but still travel around the city. And I've seen firsthand what the bus drivers had to deal with, and this is before the special shields came up that were all installed on the buses. So like all these bus drivers, including Paul, are driving around. Like there was a scramble to get PPE for them. So I saw bus drivers kind of like some with fancy masks and others with like the stuff that you can just dispose, or the ones that you just can simply pull up. There wasn't a standard immediately when Metro was, all the drivers were just driving around. And so just seeing Paul's perspective about how mentally to approach every day, get on that bus and drive around with all these strangers. They're in various states of distress and anxiety, and often I've seen them take it out on bus drivers. And so anyway, that's why I picked Paul.
There's nowhere to live. It's so dark as I'm just out to try to find the light. God's great thumbnail shining out among the charcoal sky. Like a Roman emperor, an omnipotent reminder, the slave gladiator life.